Hey, a pleasant good afternoon, everybody. This is Sports Fanatic News. That's SteelFlyers, and we are here for the next edition of the JB and Steel Show as we break down the NBA playoffs for you and the play-in. And we also break down the MLB coming back, some of the moves made, and preview maybe some way too early predictions of who's going to be at the top of divisions. We'll see if we get to that.
Maybe.
Also, we'll talk about hockey. At the end with some of the moves we didn't get to talk about on the show with Lance. Go check that out, our trade deadline show with Lance Green over on SteelFlyers as well. But first and foremost, how you doing, Steel?
JB, I'm doing great, my man. I'm doing great, JB. How is the professor?
Good. Been busy with the different hockey stuff. I was up in Reading yesterday. Trevor Gooch, one of our players, for a hat trick, so that was nice.
Nice. Yeah, man.
So they got the win and they got a hat trick. So that's always nice.
First of all, by the way, thank you for all you do here for SteelFlyers All Sports Network. Appreciate you hopping on here and being the host of the JB and Steel Show. Always love doing these shows with you because we just have fun talking about sports. And if you guys aren't following the Professor Joe, you guys need to be checking him out. He is the beat writer for the Reading Royals. You got to check out all his great articles that are posted out there on the great website, flyersnittygritty.com. So check that out, man, and get him followed and get him subscribed, man. Get it checked out. Let's go. We're going to cover the NBA playoff picture play-in format that they've got for this year, 2021-2022 for the NBA playoffs. And then we're going to get into, that's right, folks, the national pastime is back. Major League Baseball is here. Games are being played preseason. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about. A lot of moves were made in the opening salvo week or so of the opening of the season once the lockout was broken. So a lot of moves were made. So we got a lot of things to talk about there too. So let's get into this NBA thing here. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I've always was one that, like, I think the NBA right now does 16. They do 16 already in a 32-team league. So apologize for the phone in the background. But that already is half. So when you add your extra teams to get to 20 with the play-in, it just doesn't gel with me whatsoever. Like, I didn't like it. That's also why most seasons, like, basketball is my extra sport, but I do try to watch more basketball than I did this year. But this year, it's just until the crunch time, like the last couple months, there was not to me as much of a sense of, other than if you wanted to watch the Suns, Miami, like the Chicagos, who were a surprise team this year, you wanted to watch Golden State become Golden State again. There wasn't a lot to really watch for in the regular season because you could be as crappy as the Lakers this year because they're absolutely abysmal and still be in the 9th spot because LeBron's able to still play at an MVP level, and that's able to still give you that 9th spot where Anthony Davis has barely been on the court and Carmelo Anthony has basically been your second best player when he's 36 or 37 or whatever he is, when he's not LeBron James at 37 either. So, like, that team was poorly constructed, and it's showing right now that it was poorly constructed, and you are still in 9th place. So it's like that doesn't gel with me that much. The Pelicans are a team that rely a lot on having their front court and their guards, but also having Zion. Zion hasn't been healthy. He just got cleared for one-on-one drill. Yeah, they're still technically in it right now.
Yeah,
there's teams that you look at that they really shouldn't be in it. But then when you look at especially too, like, I don't like the whole 9-10 play-in because if you look at Toronto's 40-32. Minnesota is 42-31. And then the Lakers are 31-41, 30-42. Those teams shouldn't have a shot. Now, those teams should not lose to the Lakers or Pelicans, but the other teams also shouldn't have the opportunity to play them. Like, you didn't earn that right to play those teams. Now, the Clippers are one thing. They're 36-38. But even Brooklyn's a really good team. They just have that stupid regulation in New York that can't let Kyrie Irving play in Brooklyn, yet every other player that comes in from any other state can play in Brooklyn. So tell me how that makes any sense. So
Hey,
like,
man. Yeah, right.
you have 40 and 32 for the Raptors. The Charlotte's actually a pretty good 9 seed because 37 and 35 is a 9 seed's good. The East is a little bit better because you have a 500 team and you got a 37 and 35 team as the 9-10. The West, though, it looks awful because you got a team that's 30 and 42 and a team that's 31 and 41 is the 9-10. That is not, there goes the phone again. That is not a appropriate playoff record.
Oh, and just to throw things at you, right? So even the Clippers are at 36 and 38. And then even now you get to the Timberwolves and they haven't even they're barely making the cut here, the 7th seed. You know what I mean? So and they're 42 and 31. So
yeah, they're actually a pretty decent team.
That's what yeah. Okay. So the fact that in the East the worst team is only 11 games back, and in the West the worst team is good gravy 28 games back. That is a huge disparity that I think is putting a black eye on this little idea here. Okay.
Yeah, because it only works for the East. If the East and West were equal this year and somehow both sides had more balance throughout, like the East does, then it would have not looked as bad. But because of the way the Lakers and Pelicans, mostly because they haven't had Zion, but have played this year, the Lakers are also, yes, because they haven't had Anthony Davis, but they should have known that he's an injury risk going in. So, like, those two teams should not really be put on a playoff precipice where the Clippers are the Clippers. They by default were the 8th seed because the West isn't as strong this year. An 8th seed isn't always going to be under 500 like Brooklyn's the 8th seed 4 games above. So
that's the thing. You know what I mean? That what they do this right when they start expanding playoffs like in all the other sports. And then you start getting teams that are, have losing records get into the playoffs. Okay. And I think, and see, I'm completely with you on this one, Joe. I really think that makes it bad all the way around, that a team with a losing record is going to get a shot at
unless
the big
the Clippers are fully healthy, because that's the thing. The Clippers also haven't been fully healthy. But unless if they're fully healthy, they're not beating Memphis in that 7-8 seed game, in my opinion.
Okay, but
so like that's not even a good game, and that's the 7th, 8th seed game.
Well,
like on paper, that's not even a good.
Right. Well, so they should only have. So why do they have this dotted line here after the 6th? Is that where it's supposed to stop normally?
Now, no, actually, usually it would be 8 and 8 because they have 16 in, so it's the top 8 from each conference. But now they're doing it. Whoever loses in the 7-8 game has to play the
gotcha.
I think it's the winner. Yeah, it has it labeled as the winner of the 9 and 10 game.
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay. And then whoever wins that, and then that kind of that's how things go.
All right. So right now on the East, okay, you got Miami as the best team, 47 and 25, right? So that's they're kind of duking it out with a few other teams, Boston, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia. Okay, because Boston has 45 wins, Philadelphia has 44, and Milwaukee has 45. So that is a very fluent, I think, number 1 seed. Is not set in stone yet, right? Because there's still 10 games left.
Miami's not set in stone. Phoenix is pretty much set. Not pretty much. Phoenix is set in stone. It's pretty much set in stone unless they fall off. Yeah.
I mean, even if they lose the last 9 games or whatever they have left, 10 games.
Memphis would have to win every single game.
Yeah, and that's not happening.
Yeah, so I think Phoenix is set in stone. Miami, I agree with you there. They're definitely not set at the number 1 seed yet, especially because the Sixers beat them without Joel Embiid and without James Harden even playing in that game. So,
wow.
Yeah, I would say they're not necessarily set as the number 1
and
seed.
Right, and Milwaukee's only 2 games back. Right, they're 45 and 27, right? And Boston 45 and 28, so they're not that
and
far
the
back.
Sixers played one less game because we're 44 and 27.
27, right? That's what I mean. So yeah, okay. And then so it's a much tighter race, but at least you have teams with winning records. Good gravy.
Yeah, which is why in the East it doesn't look bad because everybody is at least at 500 all the way down to the 10th seed of the Hall.
I mean,
in
at
the
least.
West, it doesn't. But like for example, the Hawks would be the 8th seed in the West because they would be better than they're at 500. The Clippers are 36 and 38. So like the West is just weaker this year, and that to me it was because they wanted to obviously in the COVID with it affecting it, part of that played in, and they wanted to have more teams have opportunities because of the recovery time of certain things and all that chutzpah. But like 20 teams out of 32, like. To start that's a lot. That's why when baseball was rumored to get to 14, everybody was like, no, stop copying every other sport. The one thing people don't like about the playoffs of other sports isn't the actual playoffs itself whatsoever. It's the fact that they put too many people in it at the onset. Once you get into the playoffs, they're amazing. Sometimes those onset games, though, are absolutely destroying one team. Like.
Exactly. And I've watched, and there's a lot of like playoff, like one game playoff in baseball to make it to the playoffs.
Yeah, the one game wild card. Yeah,
the one game wild card, right? Okay, so that happens now. But I am so with you. I'm not in this realm of expanding playoffs to try to generate more money is basically what this boils down to, is what they're all trying to do, because we all know that the playoffs equals bucks. People tend to not watch during the regular season and tune in during the playoffs because it's all narrowed down and you're watching the best teams play against the best teams. Well, you keep expanding it and expanding it and expanding it. Now you're getting
not doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, but now you're getting these teams that are 30 and 42. Like, what? How do you guys get a shot? You know,
the only way the Lakers have a chance is if somehow their team stays healthy in the exact right moment. They need Anthony Davis, LeBron, and everyone else to be on the court at the same time.
And they need to win out.
Like, that's the thing. Like, well, winning out, they might not even have to do just because of New Orleans inconsistency. But in terms of, like I'm saying, to have any chance when they're in the playoffs, they get past the play-in, they need to have those guys all stay healthy for the foreseeable, and because that's not a high probability. I don't see them having a high success rate. I see LeBron having a high success rate.
Right.
But we saw in Cleveland LeBron having a high success rate until he went back and they had Kyrie Irving as the Robin.
Yeah.
And he still couldn't get over the hump when they had a Gauskas and all those other guys back in the day. So.
Hey, man, like I said, I 100% agree with you on this.
And now he's 37. Back then he was 23. So
whoa, hey, Nelly. Yeah. Whoa. No, but I'm with you though. You know what I mean? Like when you look at now, the West is pretty tight too. Most of the 2nd through 5 or 2nd through 6 seeds are all pretty tight as far as their records and things of that nature. And so they're all winning records, you know what I mean? So my whole thing is the expansion of the playoffs. If you're going to add 20 out of the 32 teams into the playoffs, then you need to add more teams, because when 2/3 of the entire league makes the playoffs, well, that kind of takes. I mean, that takes away that special. I mean, you know what I mean? Like everybody is like striving and working hard to make it to the playoffs, and you're like, yeah, I only need to finish like 400 and I can still make it. I can still breeze in. Like what's that?
Yeah, like even hockey, like people didn't love getting they're 16 now with the wild cards of 32 because it was 12 with the threes, and then you had the wild cards to the 12, and that becomes 2 and 2, 2 and 2.
Right,
So
and
yeah,
then they added
16.
Seattle to make it even out now. So now there's
So
32
like
now.
that makes more sense because 16 of 32 is half, like the
Right.
NBA was. But you don't want to go up. There was rumors in the next CBA of them wanting it at 18. I'm like, that's just stupid because then you have to add 2 more teams so we can get to 34 teams, and then that would make some sense. So we're going to put a team in Quebec, and are we going to put a team in? I don't know. Kansas City again that people think can actually be a good
pick
market.
a place, right?
Yeah, right. So like that it becomes that conversation.
I'm with
basically.
I'm with you. So all right, so let's do a quick little breakdown here of what we think maybe the chances of some of these teams now that we've discussed like kind of where they're at here. So Miami, we said, is not set, and there's still 10 games to go yet.
Yeah, I don't even think Miami's the team to beat in the East. They're just the first seed.
They're just the first seed, right? Okay.
Right now.
All right. Well, so then between Miami, Sixers, and Milwaukee, and I'll even sprinkle in Boston, who do you think it would be the who's the favorite out of that?
Well, Milwaukee has experience, obviously, because they won.
Right.
So that helps.
True.
I think it goes right now because I still need to see the Sixers' depth come to fruition like it did in that Heat game. If their depth players can do what they did in that Heat game without Joel and James Harden and be that good, they're the team to beat. Right now, because I already like how the depth does for Milwaukee, I would say they would be first. The Sixers would be in a very close second. And then Miami would still be third. It's just Miami seems to run into like they did in last year's postseason, just not being able to get enough on their offensive end. And then they start missing some, and then they kind of get all out of whack. Tyler Hero has to be the same Tyler Hero in the regular season as he is in the postseason. So, like, there's different things there where James Harden's more experienced. Joel Embiid's been in multiple postseasons.
Yeah.
Paul Millsap, you got basically as a bench coach at this point because he doesn't do much as a player. So he's been in those environments. So he's like what the Udonis Haslem is to the Heat. Millsap would be the Sixers. So I think it kind of goes in that order. But all three of those teams have a chance. But the East is, I think, the Milwaukee Sixers and then Miami.
All right. Okay, I got you. So now on the lower end of that in the East, now we got Atlanta and Charlotte and then Toronto and Brooklyn. And of those teams, I mean, what do you think? Who do you think is going to be the 7th and 8th seed out of those 4?
Well, it all this all depends on where we're at by the time the playoffs start.
Okay, if they are set the way they are right now, if it is the way it is right now, and the teams finish the way they do, Charlotte number 9.
Oh, no. I know that. I'm saying because Brooklyn is a team that could be an 8th seed that ends up in the conference finals if Kyrie Irving's allowed to play in every damn game. If Kyrie Irving is still restricted from playing in Brooklyn, they ain't going as far. Kevin Durant.
Oh, I see, because he doesn't have the he doesn't take the shot.
No, they're not carrying them to that height. It'll be like LeBron and Cleveland all over again.
Okay.
Where if they have Kyrie, Durant, and everybody else, then they're really talking business of being a team that is really only the 8th seed because of that regulation. Well, like, that's literally the only reason, in my opinion, they're the 8th seed, and they would probably have even been close to where Cleveland is at very least if they had Kyrie Irving playing every game, and probably even more close to where Chicago is at very least. So, like, that factors in a lot because this dude dropped 60, dropped 50 in a game. Like, he's one of the most talented scoring guards in the league when he's on the court. It's just he's not all the time. So, so I would say Brooklyn, if Kyrie can play, is definitely going to be the team that's going to get out of that whole play-in thing and be the team that's the winner that then that then would end up moving forward. Like the other team to get out of it, because Brooklyn beat Toronto, so obviously it couldn't be Toronto. I think Charlotte would probably have a little bit of a better chance, but I don't really. Atlanta and Charlotte is basically just flip a quarter and
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Toronto and Brooklyn definitely have the much more seasoned team, I'll say, for Toronto at least, because they were there 3 years ago to the finals. You know what I mean? With said Kyrie. But okay. So that's the East breakdown, and so you think Brooklyn's going to probably be the one coming out of that mess of teams, Charlotte, Atlanta, Toronto, and Brooklyn, and then they potentially could contend if everybody's allowed to play and everybody's there. Okay.
Yeah, I think Brooklyn will come out, and then in terms of the other seeds, one becomes the 7th, the other becomes the 8th. That'll probably be Charlotte losing to Brooklyn in that.
Okay. So there could potentially be that matchup of.
Oh, wait, no, I read that wrong, actually. So I just realized Brooklyn would then automatically become the 7th seed. Toronto would play Charlotte. So actually, looking at it that way, I would say Toronto would probably be the 8th seed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Toronto would be the 8th seed, and then Brooklyn would be the 7th seed.
The 7th, because they would win against Toronto, and then Toronto would have to play Charlotte.
Okay. So that means then that Toronto will play Miami, and Brooklyn will play Milwaukee. That's the way things are right now.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest with you. I think it breaks down where I really think that, based off of what you said with Brooklyn, I'm calling Brooklyn my dark horse, because if they have everybody there and playing, then I agree. They're not really the 8th seed. They're just the 8th seed because they haven't been able to have everybody to play. But I agree that Philadelphia, I think, is going to be either Philadelphia or Milwaukee, and Brooklyn are going to come out of the East, I think. One of those three, I think.
Yeah, and Brooklyn all depends on, like I said, Kyrie, what he's able to do and what he's not able to do in the playoffs.
Right. So. And I think with what Philadelphia did, especially, as of late, bringing in James Harden, and I think that really helped propel the Sixers to where they need to be. You know what I mean? Cleveland, I think, surprisingly are there. Chicago, surprisingly, are there. Milwaukee, okay. Boston, a little bit surprising that they're there too. You know what I mean? So that's a breakdown of the East. So let's do a quick little breakdown of the West. You said Phoenix was already set in stone, and with a 58-14 record, yeah. I'd have to say you could probably chisel that in pretty good there on that one. So now let's look at the teams below them, which are 9 games back. Memphis is 49-23, right? And then Golden State is 47-25. So I mean, the teams that are fighting for the top 4 spots, right? You get to the Jazz are 45-27, right? And so aside from Phoenix, because we already kind of have chiseled them in there, so now you have to look at Memphis and Golden State and Utah. What do you think, man? Who do you think is going to come out of that?
I love Memphis because of how good of a perennial player Ja Morant is, and the fact that he'll probably be talked about for years to come in terms of scorer and all-encompassing talent he is. The problem is they don't have the experience. Okay. This is their first kind of run, is the big show of being the top 2 seed, having all that pressure on you. Yeah. Where Golden State has Steph Curry, Steph Curry. They have Klay Thompson. They have Draymond Green. They have all these guys that have winning pedigree on top of still being good basketball players. That I think the fact that they did get healthy and are still getting healthy at the right time. I think they have the best chance other than Phoenix, because they have guys that have been there, done that, where Memphis and Utah have, other than I think Utah still has Michael Conley, they have guys that are more raw in terms of that atmosphere. So that's why I believe when it comes to Phoenix is the top of the West, that the 1 seed is actually the 1 seed there, and I think they're the team that has the best chance to. Where Golden State then, because of that experience, I think would be the 2nd team to have a chance to make it, and then Ja Morant is just that dude. So I would have to put Memphis as the 3rd team.
Okay, yeah, I mean that's kind of what I was thinking too. All right, now let's go to the the bottom end of the West, and we've touched on it already before we we're a little bit disappointed, I believe, in the fact that they're allowing so many
So I
teams.
just looked. John Morant is still like a day-to-day, but like he should be back. He averages, here it is, 27.6 points.
And you know what? They might even just set him because they only have 10 games left. So they
might do rest him because they're not going to really catch. Yeah,
that's
they're not
what I
going to
mean.
catch up to the Phoenix
Yeah, that's
Suns.
what I mean, right? That's what I mean.
That's a good point. That is a good point. Yeah.
You know, so they may just rest him because he doesn't need to come back because they're, I would say, in all intents and purposes, Memphis is a pretty solid second. I mean, the closest one is 2 games at Golden State. Okay, so they would have to be competing with them. Though I think the worst that could possibly happen to Memphis, even if they go on a bender, would be 3rd seed, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so
okay.
they're still be in a fine spot, and
exactly.
Your priority has to be keeping your star player healthy for the postseason.
And that's what I mean. So that's why I'm saying if they rest him, they still have a pretty good hold on at least the 2nd or 3rd seed because of where they are as far as record is concerned. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, all right. So let's get into the bottom end of this. And this is kind of, based off of what we talked about before. The Clippers are the 8th seed. Minnesota is the 7th. Lakers are the 9th. And New Orleans is 10th. So of all of those 4 teams, look, we already know what the issue is with the Lakers. We discussed that with, Anthony Davis not being there very much. And it's basically the LeBron show again.
Let's just shorten this up. It's Minnesota. in that bracket, in that bracket, there's no chance. Unless if the Clippers are playing 100%, everyone's healthy. Yeah, I don't see Minnesota losing that game in a million years because the thing with Minnesota is they don't have necessarily, like, you could say D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Edwards, if you want to call one of those guys the top dogs, but Anthony Edwards is only 20, and D'Angelo Russell is a guy that has been a great scorer his entire career, but you never really considered an alpha dog. So, like they have a great mix. You got Karl Anthony Towns, fantastic offensive center. Taurean Prince is a good lanky guy that can play solid both ways. So they just have a perfect blend of a team that they don't have that one just dude and then Malik Beasley's good too, among others. Patrick Beverley is a great playoff style player because he pisses off the other team and gets in your head. So I think Minnesota kind of has everything going for them. I mean, this dude flexed on LeBron the other day and slapped him in the butt. But not many guys have the confidence to do that. So Patrick Beverley is a guy that helps you a lot in the playoffs as well. Minnesota's got that, in my opinion. The Clippers, I think, though, between if it's the Battle of L.A. or New Orleans, they got the favorite in that.
All right. Okay. All right. I got you. Okay. And Zion is still kind of day-to-day too, right?
He's not even day-to-day, I don't think, because he just got cleared for one-on-ones.
Okay, okay.
So I think it's still more like a little bit I think day-to-day might be generous, but that's just from what I understood from reading the headline and reading the little synopsis.
But I did see that he was cleared for one-on-ones today, so that's going to be a big
Is
issue.
That also the right decision, though? You're New Orleans. You want to be a team that keeps building up. To me, it would be the wrong decision to push Zion for this playoffs because you're not going anywhere.
Exactly.
Unless the miracle happens, this isn't your year. Your year is next year or the following year, probably.
I agree.
So it wouldn't make sense to push him in this instance.
I agree. And that's what I wanted to bring up and wanted to ask what your opinion was. So I didn't even have to ask that question because we touched on this at the big top of the show too, that, that Zion was cleared. And how is that going to affect the playoffs for them? And I agree. I think it would probably be best for them to just make sure he's healthy and make sure that he's ready to go for training camp next year. I mean, seriously. So, all right. So now the teams coming out of the West. Give me your top 3 teams coming out of the West.
Yeah, I think I pretty much in my one explanation kind of explained it. I would do Phoenix, Golden State, and then Memphis because Ja Morant. They have the rawness to their team,
Okay.
but Ja Morant is just that dude. If
Gotcha.
there's a young guy that's going to take his team without the experience, it's probably Ja Morant.
Okay. So those three teams on the West, those three teams on the East. Who do you like for the matchup? Who do you like for the finals?
Personally, obviously, I would love to see the Sixers.
Whoa, yeah. Personally, yes. I would like to see that too.
I think they, again, have to, it depends on their depth. If they get their depth going, I think they have as good of a chance as Milwaukee. Right now, just from a realist perspective, I would probably favorite Milwaukee a little bit. And then Phoenix, I do think, will be the team because Phoenix has the perfect mix of the young Mikal Bridges. You can't really say that in plural. It sounds really weird. Bridges. And then.
Yeah, what? No.
But they have Mikal Bridges, and then they have Paul, who's the great wily veteran. And then you have Devin Booker, who, other than Ja Morant, is one of the most flashy, fun to watch young players in the league. So I think they have the perfect
fun team to watch.
Mix. Yeah. Oh, and then DeAndre Ayton, who will block anybody that comes in his radius. So like you got all those.
And he has quite the wingspan too. So
yeah.
Okay. All right. So personally, we'd like to see the Sixers, but more than likely, it's going to either be Milwaukee or Phoenix.
Well, Milwaukee would be the East team, and then, I would say Phoenix would be the West team, where
gotcha.
my second most likely would be Golden State and Philadelphia, and then you would have a battle of 3 seeds. So that'll be interesting.
All right, I would buy that too. I'd buy that too. Either way, you slice it. There's 10 games left in the regular season for the most part. And then I believe the round or the play-in starts April 12th. And runs through April 16th on that. Okay.
There's too much stuff in my head on when playoffs start.
Yeah, right. I'm with you. No, I'm with you. And as these are the standings as of right now, March 23rd. Okay, 2022. These are the standings right now. So this is very fluid, except for probably Phoenix. They're probably one of the only team that's probably not gonna go anywhere is Phoenix as far as where their seed is going to be, even if they go on a 10-game bender and lose the rest of the 10 games.
Phoenix is probably going to start resting people if they didn't. I haven't watched. The last time I watched the Suns game was like 2 weeks ago, so I don't know if they have started resting people they probably will start resting people pretty soon.
Okay. So they're going to probably lose. They're probably going to lose a couple of the games, but
they might not even lose 20 games. Like they're a team that might not even lose 20. That's when you know you put the right recipe into your soup, so to speak, to give an analogy, in order to make the perfect product.
Exactly. And boy, they have proven it too. And they've been improving year after year, getting better. You know what I mean? Phoenix has kind of been one of those teams that has been relevant over the last couple of seasons, where they are always in the conversation.
Well, they made that good run in the bubble with CP3.
That's what I mean. Okay,
so that was kind of the start of this.
Right. So the last couple of years, man, Phoenix has been relevant. They've been in the conversation because they're putting the right thing together on the court. You know what I mean? So there you go, man. There's a breakdown for the NBA's playoff play-in, and then current seeding, and then where we think guys and teams are going to show up and how they're going to play. And I'll tell you what, man, it's going to be coming up here real soon and should be pretty exciting. This is some of the best time to be watching the NBA is they're checking out the playoffs. So should be interesting. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it'll be fun to follow where the seed in the West, where we said like 2 through 5 might lie, and the East is where 1 through 5 might.
I'm with you.
Might lie. So that'll be really interesting to follow. So I think because of those tight knitness, it's really interesting to follow, and that's why I really like the playoff time, because it's still really fun. And when you get down to the bare bones, like I said, and you get past that first round stuff, it's still going to feel like the great NBA playoffs again. It's just how baseball did that 3-game wild card with COVID that they had to kind of do. I didn't like that much, and it was okay in the end. But I like this significantly less because you have 20 total people, and then you have a team like the Lakers and the Pelicans who don't even seem like they're anywhere close to a playoff race.
I mean,
meanwhile, they would still be in it. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, there you go, man. Good stuff. Good stuff for the NBA. And now, folks, we're gonna switch gears here. Now we're gonna change the size of the ball from an orange ball that's inflated and bounces to one that's white, has stitching, and goes at 100 miles an hour. And that's right. We're talking about the national pastime here, folks, baseball. And the lockout has ended. Baseball is back. We got teams playing preseason games right now as we speak. Okay. And scheduled out. And there were a lot of moves that were made, weren't there, Joe?
Yeah. There's been a plethora of moves made throughout the league, from Trevor Story going to the Boston Red Sox, Carlos Correa going to the Minnesota Twins, Baez, that people forget, before the lockout, going to the Detroit Tigers.
Exactly.
This offseason was basically two, because most people forget what even happened pre-lockout. Because it seems like it was a whole generation ago.
It was.
Like,
it was.
Where then you have the post-lockout, and that's the signings everyone's talking about, and then they're like, oh, wait, yeah, Javi Baez is on the Tigers, too. Because some people just forget what happened pre-lockout, which is understandable because of how everything's gone, but it is kind of interesting to watch when you see all that come to fruition.
I know.
But I think when it comes to baseball, they did it right in the postseason, since that's something we talked about basketball. They capped it at 12. The league wanted to get to 14. The players said, no, that's stupid. So then they ended up keeping it at, because there's only 30 clubs. That's why they do the 30 clubs in 30 days in baseball. There's not 32. So if you got it to 14, that's why I said you might as well have just done 15, because you're only one team shy of half the league. So where baseball feels different than any other sport, because we talked about basketball does half the league, hockey does half the league now that they have Seattle. But though baseball plays 162 games, they play double the. So like you have, when you do that, it takes a lot away from the regular season of a sport that's supposed to be the most ingratiated to the regular season, because it has 10 playoff teams of 32. The regular season of 30, the regular season really mattered the most. Or now having 12 of 30 is still not too bad, but once you hit 14, that's when it kind of got close. So that's why I like it staying at that, because once you hit 14, you got to lessen the game. There's no point of playing 162 games if 14 teams are in the postseason. Imagine if hockey played first of all, that'd be terrible for health reasons, but played like game, and then also said we're having 16 teams in the play. Like you would be like, well, what's the sense? Like, why are we putting these? Like, what are we doing? Like, so that's why I like it at 12. I do think, though, the sweet spot, as my phone fell over again, there we go. But I think the sweet spot on games in the end, I think Mad Dog Russo kind of has it right, is like somewhere around 140, 145. I think in the future, they'll probably lessen it by 15 to 20, because if they do eventually put in extra playoff teams in the next CBA via 14 teams, you have to take less games from somewhere, so the playoffs don't go all the way into Mr. November. There's not a new Mr. November like Derek Jeter was, because you have the playoffs going into the cold months, and you're waiting for the snow to subside in Colorado if Colorado's a good team. So you're
oh, you're waiting for Yankee Stadium there that you can blow off the snow so you can and play some baseball. Look, okay, so before we get into the moves and all the things that happened and everything like that, just the fact that baseball is back, the fact that they were able to come to an agreement finally and get the players back on the field. I'm with you on the number of games. That is a staggering number of games to play. And you're right, it's double the amount of games that a hockey player. Could you imagine if a hockey team played 162 freaking games. I mean, good gravy. Now look, I can understand too why they play that many, because let's face it, for a 3-hour baseball game on average, right? You only have to run maybe a total of 3 minutes of that 4 hours, right?
Yeah.
So,
although
I
at the
get
same
it.
time, like I played soccer and baseball growing up.
Yeah.
The one thing about baseball, sometimes I felt you got more sore playing baseball because
You
you
stood
had to
around.
stop and start.
Yeah.
Where in other sports, you kept just
Constantly moving.
going,
Exactly.
so you never had time to think about anything. Where in baseball, if you're already sore pregame and you're playing through something, you have all the time in the world to think about, oh, my wrist feels terrible.
And you're
it's a
not moving
completely
it.
different.
You're not
Yeah.
working it. You're not keeping it
Yeah,
loose. You're not.
if you're playing hockey through a messed up wrist, it's not going to feel good after the game. But during the game,
Yeah.
you're going to just be going through the motions.
You
So, like,
know, if you got a little
in
hitch in
baseball,
your
you have
giddy
time
up,
to sit there.
you know,
Yeah.
you can still line up and snap the ball and still block the guy in front of you. You can still kind of sort of run down the field and
Yeah, like I played with a sprained ankle when I sprained my ankle in soccer and in baseball. Where in baseball, I thought about it every time I was standing in the outfield. Like, where in soccer,
exactly.
I had no time to think. I just started kicking with my left foot when my right ankle was messed up. So, like, I adjusted, but I didn't have time to think.
That's the thing. So the fact that we do have baseball back, the fact that they have done the playoffs right. I don't think adding any more teams to the playoff structure is good. I wouldn't have a problem if they played a couple,
because it was 10 and then they went from
to 12. Okay. But I would not have a problem if they lessened the games, because when you get to the playoffs in baseball, the first round is the best of 5, or is it the best of 7? Is it the best of 7 all the way?
The first actual round of the DS is 5, yeah.
5, right.
Then that wild card game's 1, and then
right. But then once you get past that, then it's the best of 7.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the other thing too, where playoffs aren't once and done. You play best of 5 or best of 7. Right? So not only do you play 162 games during the regular season, but if you make it all the way to the World Series, right?
And then, well, if you count the preseason too, because of the guys getting ready, some players said this on the podcast. If you make it all the way in, you're over 200 and something games.
Right? So that's an extra potential 20 to 30 games just in the postseason.
Yeah.
Okay, so like I said, I wouldn't have a problem if they cut back the games, the number of games that they play to a little shorter. You know what I mean?
I also see baseball eventually expanding, because they're right now.
More teams, you mean? Expanding by more teams?
Yeah, because I think right now, aren't they the only league that's not at 32?
Yeah, because football.
How many teams are in the NFL?
32 now.
$32, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, they're the only of the major 4 sports that aren't at 32, because hockey
is now at 32,
and then football is at 32. So they're the only. So I feel like in order to make more money over time, they'll eventually expand to where, who knows, but to different places, and maybe to put a team back in Montreal. People wanted the Expos back. Maybe to put another team up there in Montreal. So then you have another Canadian market with Toronto. And then you put another team down here somewhere, wherever the heck you want to throw it. So, like,
I got you.
That's something I could see happening in the future, and then I would see them going to 14.
That would make more sense then, yeah.
Yeah, and then you would probably lessen the games then, just because you have more teams already, and I see them.
That makes sense.
I see them eventually lessening the games, but also when they bring in other markets, which teams like Montreal's been calling to have the Expos back for a while. So they would definitely be open to probably doing that.
Yeah.
They just have to figure out the logistics.
Yeah. No. I'm with you on that for sure. Okay. So we did mention that there were a lot of moves that were made in the second off season, if you will. What was one of the biggest moves that surprised you, and what was one of the biggest moves that didn't surprise you that happened?
Surprised me was actually some people had it, but I thought it was more like, yeah, he could go to Boston, but I don't see it necessarily. Trevor Story going to Boston in the end was kind of a surprising one to me because they already have Xander Bogaerts, they got Rafael Devers,
Yeah,
and
they're
they
already
got
pretty stacked.
a very good young second baseman. So like it's kind
Yeah.
of like, where does he fit into this entire equation in the infield? Where when he went there, that surprised me in the positive because for people that don't know, people that follow my channel know, my American League team is the Red Sox, because I've always used to be in Boston. My dad went on business trips, so that worked out well for me too. But that was also a surprising thing in the end because I did not see him coming to a team that already had a solidified infield on paper, where you're like, okay, now on top of that solidified infield, you have Trevor Story. So it's
Okay.
like that's why it's more like people are probably gonna say, well, they have Jeter Downs, he's not fully proven yet. They got Delvic Arroyo, but Christian Arroyo, when he had a chance this year, went on that nice run for a couple weeks. And so if
Yep.
you let him start at second base, he might have done even better. Jonathan Arose is a good contact hitter that can run. If he started, he could probably have had a decent full season. But obviously, if you have a chance to get somebody like Trevor Story and put him with Xander Bogaerts and Rafael Devers, you're not going to turn that down. So now it's just, where does he? Is he playing second? Is he playing short? Is Bogaerts moving to second? Who's playing short? Is he going to play third? And like, what are you going to do in order to keep him the healthiest and the best Trevor Story you can get? But to me, that was a little bit of the surprising one because I didn't necessarily see him going to Boston. One, and then the other one was Correa to the Twins. I don't think anybody had Carlos
Yeah.
Correa
Okay. There you go.
pegged to the. I don't think anyone in their right mind had Carlos Correa pegged to the Twins. Like when people saw that, that was like, okay, the Twins mean business. Like
Okay.
so, like that because the Twins were doing these weird moves of like they weren't good last year. They were in last, and they were acting like they were good. Where it's like, okay, we just need to do X, Y, and Z, and then we'll be back to being the Twins of a couple years ago, where we're hitting homers out of the yard and everything's fine and dandy and we love life. Where you were thinking, well, you were in last year, so like, where is this? Well, you have prospects that are coming up, like different guys that can pitch, but at the same time, you added Sonny Gray, who's a good veteran. You brought in Dylan Bundy, who had a down year last year, but he's 29 years old. It's not like he's a guy you bring into a retooling team or a rebuilding team. So, like, he obviously they kind of showed the differentiating between what us as fans or analysts think compared to what teams think, where they're like, well, no, we just had a crap year. We just completely fell off the face of the earth. But we think with our prospects and with the hitting we have in our lineup, if we had more pitching and now we have one of the best bats in the league, we can, in an AL Central that seems wide open, kind of be having a chance here along with the rest of these teams. So
10-4.
that was a surprise kind of from that perspective.
Last game against the your beloved Boston Red Sox, 10-4, Twins over Boston.
Oh yeah,
that's a lot of bats going on there, boy. 10 runs. Whew. All right, I
you
get
know
it.
about the preseason?
Yeah, I mean, I get it.
Yeah,
it's preseason, but I don't know. I get it. Okay, so which teams of all the teams? Okay, so you pointed out that the Twins made some moves and some other teams. What did you think about like some of the moves that like the Cubs, or not the Cubs, I'm sorry, the Mets made, or some of the moves that maybe the Cubs might have made, or just some of the other moves that were made? Because there was a lot of moves made. You know what I mean? And do you think that maybe with all the moves that were made by all of the teams in general, who do you think has improved the most? Of all the moves that were made throughout this offseason, who do you think has improved the most? I mean, I think you've already touched on the Twins, I think, but who do you think has really improved the most with the moves that were made in this second offseason?
I actually think because they might have not done as many moves as other teams, but the moves they did to solidify their team, I would have to say Toronto, because they were able to grab Yusei Kikuchi, who's overpaid, but that's beside the point. He can be a good fourth or fifth starter for you. Kevin Gosman played really well and got going with the Giants. He's a great guy to bring in when you already have Jose Barrios and you got young kids that can pitch. You got Hungjin Ryu, who was in a Cy Young conversation just a couple years ago. They got the pitching now to go with the lineup. It was finishing out that pitching that needed to be fixed in Toronto. Gotcha. And then they have two starters. One of them's not going to make the starting rotation probably. That one of those guys could become a great reliever for you just because he doesn't make the starting rotation. In Nathan Peterson, I think Nate Pederson will probably be the guy that kind of is, or Nate Pearson, I mean, will probably be the guy that's kind of the odd man out, and they already have him listed as a relief pitcher even coming off of his injury. So he might be the guy that they get to be that fireball or that throws 98 out of the bullpen that just never made the starting rotation. And that really helps you out as an extra guy that can give you a couple out of the bullpen. So I would say that their pitching combined with getting Matt Chapman, who's a platinum glove winner any day of the week, forget gold glove, he's the step up on defense and can hit. You helped your defense hitting and you helped your pitching when you didn't need to do anything else. If there were three things I said for Toronto they had to do, maybe add one more bat that's also great defensively. Matt Chapman might be the best defensive player in all of baseball. So you did that. You added
there is that.
pitching to fill out. Well, you added great pitching to fill out in Kevin Gosman. Kikuchi had a tale of 2 seasons, but as a fifth starter, you could have a 4 or 5 ERA. And then you also have a very good outfield in terms of fielding and hitting, and they also have Palacios, who can potentially do some stuff out there for them. They got Lourdes Gurriel. They got Teoscar Hernandez, who's one of the most underrated players in baseball just because he's in a lineup with Vlad Guerrero, Bo Bichette, and George Springer, and now Matt Chapman. Probably even be more underrated. But, like, you have guys that are literally not talked about at the game just because they're in the Blue Jays lineup, like Lourdes Gurriel and Teoscar, that you have analysts try to bring up on television because of how good they are. And they're like, wait. I also have to bring up this guy because we always talk about these guys, and like that's how good they put together their lineup. So I think they're a team that's the most improved because they didn't have to do as much as some other teams. Like the Mets, for example, made a lot of different moves.
Yeah.
The Twins added on more, but like the moves they made were exactly what they needed.
Awesome, man. That's a great breakdown of that because
which I don't like saying because they're in my division for my American League team in the AL East. But
I mean, they added Castellanos. Phillies added
the Phillies. Yeah. Well, the Phillies
Castellanos.
The AL and NL East, except for the Orioles and Nationals in the NL. It's going to be a fairly competitive division. I do think the AL will be more competitive with the 4 because I do think the Marlins will be kind of in a competitive 4th place or in 3rd place by 1 point if somebody disappoints. But like I think the division with the moves the Marlins made that were surprise moves, like having Jorge Soler go down there for I think it was 4 years. So like he adds power into the middle of that lineup when you have a lot of really good young talent. It wouldn't surprise me if they're in the top 3 even. So, like, I think both of these divisions, the NL East used to get how the NFC least, they call it in football. They used to say that about the NL East because of how the Braves were doing late. So, like, I don't think they'll have that mantra anymore with the NL East because they have a really filled out teams now where in both of the Eastern divisions, there's just one outlier, which is the Orioles in the AL and then the Nationals in the NL. But the Nationals don't have to worry about it because they won a World Series a few years ago. Right. Baltimore, I don't think has won in my entire life. So they actually would want to eventually be good at baseball again. But
yeah, hey, how about that? Being good at baseball again, you know what I mean? So
but the Cubs are another interesting team that you brought up from the NL perspective, kind of like how you can't really get a gauge on like they're in everybody's eyes, other than maybe the Cubs, they're a team that people think is in this at least retool because they got rid of the Rizos. They don't have like all those guys that were their stars of that World Series team. None of them are really on the team anymore. So like you kind of start thinking well, where's your mindset? Wilson Contreras has been in trade rumors, but then you go out at it and Drelton Simmons, which seems like a one-year shortstop for a team that still thinks they're competitive. And then you go sign a Clint Frazier, who hasn't been as good recently, but is a guy that could be a diamond in the rough pick up in the free agency because he can really hit the ball. He's just not the best fielder. Exactly. So like, you're doing some of these fill-out moves that make it seem like you're still a competitor. You also have Marcus Stroman, obviously, who's a very good pitcher, who was, I think, pre-lockout. And they brought in Wade Miley from the Reds, who for some reason they let him go. Their team, to me, I think is going to be one of those fun, scrappy, competitive teams is what I label them going into the season. And then we'll see if, because of the good young guys that they have mixed in with the Kyle Hendricks, who's not the same Kyle Hendricks of a couple years ago, but still good, the Alex Mills, the Wade Mileys, like, can they mix in with those guys and get them to be above the whole hump and actually win it all rather than being like the team that basically is good and competitive but never can get to the playoff competitiveness and is just a team that is always going to hurt other teams' playoff chances in this season but not necessarily fully help their own, where this could be the year before.
Boy, that's a quandary to be in. Jeez. All right. Well, there you go, man. Okay. So we still have 2 weeks to go here, 15 days technically, before the start of the baseball regular season. So there's still quite a few preseason games left to play here, and teams are playing games now. Would like to kind of circle back around with this, Joe, and do like a opening day kind of prediction type of thing. Maybe we can do this next week on the show next week and see now, because we'll have another full week of preseason games under their belts. You know what I mean? And maybe we'll be able to have a better understanding of maybe who can some of the leading teams be in each of the divisions.
Yeah. Well, I'll give people a tidbit of how I assess teams. I don't really use the preseason that much. The preseason's
I don't.
The preseason's more for the pitchers. Like Sir Anthony Dominguez, for example, yesterday for the Phillies, came back from Tommy John, was zipping 96 to 98 and had the slider back. So you're going to take notice of that. But, like, I'm not looking at it as, this guy's hitting 450. Obviously, you're not going to hit 450 in the regular season, because if you do, you're better than Ted Williams. Yeah. So, that's the thing. So, that's why I use it as a gauge for, is this guy ready to be in the league yet? But beyond that, you don't really.
Yeah, but you can also use that as a way to gauge who their starting lineup is going to be. And you know what I mean? You can use that to gauge who is going to be projected to be in their starting lineup. So based off of those projections, you can kind of extrapolate out, hey, this team is going to be pretty good based off of who their starting pitchers are going to be, who their outfield's going to be, and what their offense is going to look like. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. But I'm saying that's not me forming that off of the preseason. That's me forming that off of knowing what the roster is.
Yes,
so exactly. And what those guys did in past regular.
No, but what I was trying to impress on the listeners or was that we would just like to do a show to break down the teams before the start of the season, so we can kind of give you an idea of where we think teams are going to be and how they're going to play. You know what I mean? At least we can give them that kind of breakdown and assessment.
Yeah, well, why don't we get – well, I did give them two last place. Well, the NL East, I don't know who – well, the Nationals will be in last place, second to last for seed. So two last place teams I think will be Orioles and Nationals. Yeah. For the AL Central, I can't – the Kansas City made some nice additions, but I don't think they're fully there yet. But will they be in last place, or will Cleveland be in last place? I think Cleveland might have a better chance than Kansas City. So, they're really going on a retool thing. So, at very least, if you don't want to call it a rebuild. And then when it comes to the NL Central, Pittsburgh. So that's
okay. I mean, I've been like seeing and hearing things about Pittsburgh as well too. So that's quite surprising, to be honest with you, to get Pittsburgh in there. So too. All right.
No, I think Pittsburgh, I'm saying, will be the last place team.
Oh, last place team, yeah. But I mean,
Yeah, like
I've
they're
been,
at the Nationals, Orioles. They'll be the last
yeah,
place team in the
that's what
NL
I mean. Yeah,
Central.
that's what I've been hearing is
The
they're
AL
not.
Central, I don't know who will be. I would guess the Guardians going in will probably be the last place team, and then the West for NL would probably the Diamondbacks have a couple of decent. Probably the Rockies.
Okay.
Most likely the Rockies will end up being in last in the NL West, and then the AL West. Texas made nice. Probably by default is honestly the way that the A's are trading the team and trying to retool in other people. But you can never kind of count out the A's. But I would say on paper it's the A's.
Okay. Well, there you go, man. There's a quick breakdown for you guys right there, man. Pro Joe breaking it down for you. We did a show, trade deadline day for the NHL with Lance Green and Professor Joe, and we talked about a lot of the moves that were happening and things of that nature. And there were a couple of moves that happened towards the end that we didn't get a chance to go over and cover. And I gotta tell you, man, with what happened during the NHL trade deadline, it wasn't nearly as intense as it's been in the past. Like, I mean, I remember when there was stuff like you had to refresh every, 1 or 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like I said on Lance on the show with not Lance's show. We just did an all-encompassing show, but on the show with Lance, I don't necessarily agree with that because I think it was still pretty lively. It just was more spaced out because, like you said on the show, they put the deadline farther back. I think the deadline itself was still a very vibrant deadline. It's just some trades are made on the 21st, others are made on the 20th, others are made on the 18th, others are made on the 16th, others are made on the 17th. Connor Foley was made in February. So,
right?
There's different, there's all spaced outness to it where I think that's why it doesn't feel as vibrant. But as a whole, like when you get the even a guy like to Andrew Kopp's level traded, who was an underrated player in a lot of people's eyes, and he gets moved. That's pretty big. You get a guy that Detroit was able to get going again in Vladislav Nemestikov. They're able to get a fourth for him to a team that's trying to compete like Dallas. That's even a good, solid, small move. And then one that everybody knows I like if they follow me on Twitter, Carolina getting my good buddy Max Domi. So
we all like that. We all thought that was a good move. So I think
that's the one. Yeah, and then in terms of the defenseman, Aiden Herchuk, who went to Columbus, has a better chance, I think, of being a steady NHL defenseman. Obviously, that makes sense because they traded Max Domi. They're going to get the better prospect. He's 19, just as emerging at BC. And Tyler Inamoto is more of I believe he goes to Wisconsin. Sometimes I get teams mixed in my head. I think he's Wisconsin, where he's more of just a physically demanding defenseman that might be able to develop into a solid, physically demanding third pairing guy. But the upside is more for the defenseman that Columbus got there, and Aiden Herchuk. He's just 19, so you still got to give him some time to grow into what he is. But Max Domi for Carolina, I think works one or two ways. He's coming off of his foot injury, so when he comes back, he slides in pretty nicely. But on top of that, some people think that was just a move for this year. I don't. I think that was a move, even though his contract's expiring. I think they looked at that and went, well, Vincent Trocheck's going to make bank after this season he had. And Don Waddle looked at that and went, we can't pay this dude. We can't give him around the same money Svechnikov got. Otherwise, we're just locking ourselves in the same cap hell as the San Jose Sharks. We can't keep giving it. And especially when we're a team like Carolina, who is in this middle ground in terms of market, you can't give out a bunch of those $6 million and up contracts because that's really going to start harping you. So I think getting Max Domi for them wasn't even just for this year, but it was for they think they could extend him. Like he got paid $265 this year. You could probably give him a 4 AAV for a couple years if you wanted to after this year, and I think he'll take that. Where Trocheck's more towards the $7 million range. Everybody that you look at, even in Canes fan groups, their fans know the writings on the wall that this is his last season in Carolina just because of monetary reasons. So I think Max Domi is perfect to keep around because then Jordan Staal, even though he's your captain doesn't have to be in your top three lines. Like he could eventually just be a great 4C. Kakaniemi, I think they eventually envision playing in Trocheck.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Yeah.
And then you would have Max Domi come down to the third line if you play him at C. If you don't play him at C, because like Steve thinks he doesn't love that and believes in all those rumors about that, then you can play him on the wing. So.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I think the Ryan Carpenter to Calgary, and I also like the Riley Nash to Tampa Bay moves as well. I thought those were really good, and along with the Max Domi, I really thought that was a great move as well too. And there was a couple moves that were made at the end. Alexei Malenchuk goes to Tampa Bay from San Jose. They get Anthony Moran, and then there was
Tom Moran,
yeah, and then Victor Rask for future considerations from the Minnesota Wild, and then the Winnipeg Jets. Man, they pulled a serious for Andrew Kopp for New York Rangers. Holy moly! I mean, if you look at the haul for that, a 2022 second round pick, a 2023 second round pick, and a 2023 fifth round pick. Holy moly!
And also, one of the second round picks can turn into a first if the Rangers win 2 rounds in the playoffs.
Yeah, like all right, yeah. That's a heck of a deal right there, I would think.
Yeah, and if the Rangers, well, first of all, Kopp's going to play over 50% of the playoff games if the Rangers make it to that spot. That's guaranteed. And then Morgan Barron is a very solid prospect that's going back to Winnipeg too, a bigger center that might still need to work on his skating a tad, but in terms of his overall play, he's never going to be a guy that does it because of his skating. He does it because he's great positionally, and he uses his body to get through people. He uses his size very effectively. So he's a perfect guy to have mixed in with the guys in Winnipeg, and then you get a second for this year, a second for the stack draft of next year, and then a fifth round pick plus New York did get a sixth for next year's draft back
2023. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think that will be an interesting trade for both teams because Kopp still is a younger player too. It's not like
still has a lot of upside. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think he's a guy that really could fit in well to that team as well. One trade I was kind of happy we were able to get a fourth for from the Flyers perspective with Brass.
Derek Brassard.
Yeah, Brass, I think, will do well in Edmonton because they need a guy that can bring more speed to their depth lines of the third line and actually be able to skate with their guys on the wing and not be all the way back here.
Yeah.
The wingers are all the way up here. So, I think that he fits in pretty well with their team. But also Edmonton, to me, if I had to pick a most disappointing team of the deadline, it's the Oilers. Because
they did not address their goaltending.
No, they didn't address the biggest need. I love Brett Kulak. I think Brett Kulak's one of the more underrated defensemen in hockey just because he's not great, so nobody talks about him. But he is very good defensively in terms of shutting down, maybe not your best player, but consistently one of the second and third best players on each team defensively, where he'll get it off of their tape and he can make that pass up the ice to get it to the goal.
Yeah.
So I think he's a guy that I really like mixing in with the defensive group. Brass, I just said, I think he fits in fine there. The problem is Mikko Koskinen has got going again. Peyton actually was right about Mikko Koskinen when I had him on the podcast, where I thought he was being a little generous, but he has been a guy that's always done whatever the team asked of him. So he was always right on that. But this year he has started to actually do more in terms of not just doing everything the team asked him, but performing to the level the team wants him to perform at the recently, where now I think the last time I looked, his numbers have been drastically improving, where now they're 307 goals against. That's Edmonton's defense. But to have above a 903 save percentage when I remember looking like a month ago, he was all the way down in the 800s, like 880 something. Like he had to be doing really solid lately. Where I think this year he stepped up, but they should have still got another goaltender because Mike Smith has never got back to his Mike Smith level of the past yet.
Nope.
And Stuart Skinner, for whatever reason, they just don't want to give enough playing time to. So
exactly.
I think they still should have. That's why, to me, they're the most disappointing team when it comes to the deadline.
Okay. I was impressed.
By the way, that trade got voided. I just saw that pop up. The trade that was of getting Dadonov and a second to Anaheim for John Moore and Ryan Kessler has just been voided by the NHL.
Oh, really?
Because Dadonov did submit his trade requests, teams he would not go to on time. It was false that he did not have that submitted on time, that therefore the trade was okay. So therefore the trade automatically rejected because he had on as his teams not to go to the Anaheim Ducks.
Okay. Well, sorry about that.
Voided, yeah.
Okay, well, there you go. Well, so much for that move.
Which, that's bad for Vegas. Vegas is screwed now because they got to figure out how to fit all that cap, everybody coming back. Getting rid of Dadonov's 5-something, that's the reason they took on Kessler's contract, because they can put it on the LTIR.
Yeah.
Vegas now needs to figure out another way to make up the money. Now, we know teams tend to do this guy's oblique is bothering him. We need to do blah, 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 blah. And, actually, his oblique's really bothering him. We need to put him on the LTIR. Meanwhile, he probably doesn't need to be on the LTIR. So, like,
I'm not saying a word. I'm not saying a word. Because I know what you mean. But I'm not saying a freaking word. Nope, ain't doing it. Joe, my man, a great edition of the JB and Steel Show here. We're volume 14 already. Wow. There you go, man. Why don't you tell the folks how we can reach you, where we can get all your great articles, my man?
Flyers Nitty Gritty is a good spot for all that different stuff. SteelFlyers, of course, as well. And then also at Sports Fanatic News with a P on YouTube, where I do hockey, baseball, football, different mix of basketball here and there. But I really appreciate you guys for tuning in for our 14th edition of the JB and Steel Show. Steel, tell everybody where they can find all your wonderful content.
Oh, man, thank you very much for all the work that you do here, Joe. Really appreciate all that. The flyer, the beat writer for the Reading Royals, Joe Borek. That's where you got to be following him, checking him out. You can check me out on Twitter at SteelFlyers52. You can also find me on the web at www.steelflyers.com, where you can find all of the great Steel Flyers All Sports Network, great company of talent with the Pearl of Wisdom show, the Great Hockey Writers Inc. show, the Great Off the Wall Hockey show, and of course the JB and Steel show, along with Steel Flyers show. Thank you guys very much for watching. We'll catch you all the next time on the JB and Steel show.